Hello, Internet. Welcome to episode number 258 of the Comic Watchers Show. He's Chad, I'm Matt. We love comics, and this is our show where we get to talk about it. So this week, we are hanging out with Phillip Kennedy Johnston, writer of Batman and Robin at DC and over at Marvel, Hellhunters and the Incredible Hulk. Phillip, how the heck are you, man?
Good, man. Good to see you.
So you're a pretty busy guy these days. How are you managing your time? Feeling good?
I work a lot. I'm doing what I can do here. I'm trying to keep up with stuff, as I imagine you guys are.
Yeah, well, not to the level you are, but sure.
Well, I don't know. That's not true. The thing about the work I do is that it's on shelves, so people see it, but I'm not under any illusions that I'm the only one, putting in long hours. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, Chad, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Sure. Before we hop into everything, can you tell us about your journey as a comic book reader and as a creator?
Yeah, sure. First, you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, good. Got a mic I haven't used in a while. As a reader, I learned how English worked from comics. I basically taught myself to read from comic books that my dad would bring home from, garage sales or whatever. Like he would bring home comics in like cardboard boxes that somebody probably sold for $1 because they're cleaning out their grandpa's house or something. And that's just that's where my love for comics came from, is these old, largely ripped up books. There was a lot of Batman and Superman in there. There was a lot of Marvel team up with Spider-Man kind of teaming up with B-listers sometimes, and it was a good way for me to learn the rosters of both publishers. There's kind of a cartoony stack, like Gladstone and Golden Key, and some of the books that are like forerunners to DuckTales, like a lot of Uncle Scrooge and Beetle Boys and all that stuff. So yeah, and right from the jump, when I was reading those things, I was making my own. Usually not with my own characters. Usually I was copying the stuff that I loved. I was making my own. If I saw a really cool picture of Superman or a G.I. Joe character or whatever, I would just try to copy it, and then eventually I would kind of branch out and try to make my own stuff. So yeah, I just came from those old boxes of stuff. My dad always regarded comics kind of as trash. Like he was always bragging that he learned to read from comic books, but he had no use for them as an adult. But he would bring home the stuff, just a tool to help me learn to read, and that is how I used it. But I just really fell in love with that joining of art and language. Something about comics spoke to me in a way that still art and prose. Well, it's not like I never loved, like fine art or animation or prose stories. Like I love all that stuff, but something about comic books, like the joining of sequential images, just always just spoke to me. I don't know. And Dad seemed disappointed by that. He considered it kid stuff, and he wanted me to. He's an interesting dude. When he was reading to me, it wasn't a very playful kind of house, but he read to me a fair bit. And he wasn't reading me like Curious George or like kid stuff. He was reading me like Shakespeare and Mark Twain and stuff right from the jump. And I'm sure that most of it's gone over my head, but that's just that shaped my my perception of English quite a bit. And comics was kind of like this really fun kind of childlike, more age appropriate escape. And he found that frustrating, but in your face, Dad, and I get to make it all the time.
That's awesome, man. So tell us. Go ahead.
How did he get a chance to see you, as a writer now, and how does he, if he did, how does he feel about that? Or
he doesn't give a shit. We don't talk that much. It's fine. With that, we don't need to unpack all that. But he's
okay.
He had a very, it doesn't matter. He has his own goals for his own work and goals for his kids, and We're just not the same. That's fine.
Like
I'm very content how things have turned out.
Mm-hmm. So you're currently writing Batman and Robin over at DC, like we said in the beginning. And how's that experience been? I mean, you wrote Superman, for God's sake, over in Action Comics and had a very well-received War World run. Yeah, I did say that right. Forgive me. I am off my game tonight because I'm fighting the horrible sinus infection. So,
oh, dude, I'm sorry.
If I say something crazy or ramble, that's why.
Dude, don't sweat it. I'm sorry, you're not feeling well.
Oh, thank you. But my point in bringing that up is you're no stranger to the A-list characters. What's the tandem of Batman and Robin as far as you are concerned as a writer?
Forgive me. What do you mean?
Well, so everybody has like their own approach to Batman and Robin, right? Like they're buddies. I mean, in this case, it's Bruce and Damian, and it's father and son, and they get along, as like they get along. They have their history together, but everyone likes to put their own spin on it. So, how do you approach them as characters? Is I guess a better way to put it.
If I had to boil it down, I guess I would say they both represent such different power fantasies,
Mm-hmm.
and they're equally important. And I needed them both as a kid real bad, and even now they still kind of help drive me. Like I still have goals and things I want to accomplish, but also this thing that I want to be. And that comes from reading Superman and Batman stories when I was a kid. Superman is that thing that that makes you look up, that makes you just, and I just know, some, like a lot of comics fans, or like, our age or older, are still trying to recapture that feeling that comics gave them when they were a kid discovering Wolverine for the first time, or Superman or Hulk or whatever their thing was. When they first discovered it, it just made them feel so powerful, or they just got so jazzed off of it. And comics now suck because they don't give me that same feeling, where you're never going to get that back. It's like stories are different now and you're different now.
Yeah.
Like you're never going to, it's going to be hard to, you're not going to see a Star Wars movie that captures you the same way it did the first time, but man, I just think back to that time when I first discovered Superman, and I was this lonely, kind of sad, frustrated kid in the Midwest, largely alone. And I read and watched, in the Christopher Reeve film, the story about this guy who discovered that he was sent there by people who loved him to do great things. And that realization was so powerful to me. And I'm reading it and experiencing it to the soundtrack with John Williams, score. And that shaped my whole life in a way I cannot express. Like I'm trying to recapture that feeling that it gave me as a kid for others. I'm trying to give that feeling to others, because that was like a religious experience to me. That is like this sacred feeling that I'm trying to give to readers. Like when I'm getting Clark Kent's voice right, I know it because I can hear John Williams' music in it. That's how I know I'm getting it right. Like when he says some simple, concise, powerful, inspirational thing. When I've written him so well, like as such a good, like virtuous character, that he thinks of the thing to say that I am not good enough to think of myself as a person myself. Like it's writing somebody better than you is hard. Because you can always write a scumbag, but like writing somebody who's better than you is or smarter than you, that kind of thing, is like, it's a challenge. But anyway, so that's Superman is the thing that makes you look up, that inspires you. Like, I can be great. I can help. I can save everyone. I can do this. I have what I need to get out there and save the world. Even the people who don't know they need help. Even the people who, it's just this really powerful. I'm getting chills right now thinking about it, and just how powerful that idea is. And the idea that you can have absolute power, or even crave absolute power, but use it in absolute humility and compassion. have to believe that's possible. Like even especially now when we're just live in this world just ruled by fucking scumbags who just try to, you know, gather all the power for such like purely selfish ends. I have to believe that absolute power does not have to corrupt absolutely. I have to believe that great power can be wielded with compassion and humility. That's what Superman is for me. I'm sorry I went on too long about that. Batman, Superman is my fucking religion. Like I care about Superman a lot. Like that is an idea that we need and that I take extremely seriously. The Batman power fantasy is more inward focused. Like if Superman is the thing that makes you look up, Batman is the thing that makes you look in and be like, I will make myself into a force of nature through sheer force of will. Like I am, I will, think and plan and prepare and work 10 steps ahead of everyone else. I will make myself the thing that can stand toe to toe with Superman and win. Because I am enough as that I will make myself, nth degree powerful. So anyway, yeah. So Superman's the thing that makes you look up. Batman's the thing that makes you look inward. Whereas Superman is all about like, how do I get out there and save everyone? Oh, thanks, Alex. Batman is the thing that makes himself into a force of nature through force of will. It's about being, just not giving up. So that's how I approach those characters. Batman is just, he's got this. I think about that thing I just said a lot, where he needs to be as good as Superman without any of the physical gifts and without that inspirational thing that I just talked about too. Like he never had that moment where he finds the crystal in the barn and like he's, Batman is shaped through trauma. That's a very different kind of thing. And he has to make himself great with the tools that are inside of him now and the way he spends his time. How intense must a person be to make himself great enough to stand toe to toe with Superman and win? So I try to think about how different he is from us, like where every calorie, every macro, every twitch of a muscle fiber, every decision he makes is made so calculatingly. He's just not like us. So I think about that. I think about how intense he would have to be. How, like in my Batman and Robin book, you see there's a timestamp on a lot of the panels, and it goes down to like the millisecond, or I guess decasecond when it starts out, because it's just as a way of just reminding everyone how closely he watches time always. And when they're about to go to this thing, he's like, "We're leaving at 7:38," and everything is kind of planned out exactly how things are going to go. That's important. What must it be like to be the son of a guy like that? I mean, we all worried about disappointing our parents, disappointing our dad or whatever. What if your dad's literally Batman? And you're actually not good enough, like if you're actually not, if your dad is like the toughest dude alive, toughest, smartest, guy who knows everything, who's watching everything, who hears everything, who has absolute control over his city and his house. And it's got to be kind of a shit way to live. So it's been really fun to show Batman and Robin in that light. And yeah, so it's been fun, but it's also, I take it very seriously. There's when you see Bruce Wayne on screen in panel, I should say, he talks more or less like the rest of us. When you see Batman speaking, there's almost never any commas anywhere. Every statement that he makes, every sentence that he speaks, when he's really himself, when he's truly Batman, every statement is just a stone that he just lays there, and it's very calculatingly, and yeah, it's just a different kind of way. I wanted to show that difference between Bruce Wayne and Batman and make the reader feel it, even if they don't know why at a glance.
So the way you're kind of exploring the relationship between Bruce and Damian, is Damian's not like actively rebelling. He's kind of looking for a different, questioning the path he's on. Um, are you bringing anything that you as a parent yourself, have dealt with to the story?
Oh yes. I I have my Batman-esque tendencies as a dad, as far as like a list of stuff that we've got to do every day. I have a list for myself that I do every day, or you know, as best I can. And there's a list for my son as well. I mean, it's not like draconian. It's not like there's no abuse happening here, but he has stuff that I want him to do. Like a lot of parents will have like like a number of minutes per day they're allowed to be on screens, that kind of thing. And I found that not very effective for my son. If I gave him an hour a day on screens, or even if there was time that he could earn beyond that kind of thing, he just hated the shit out of it. It made it so that he really did not enjoy the time he did get, because he was just watching that clock countdown. It's like, oh my God, I just hate this. He just hated the ticking clock so much. That was not a good solution. So instead, there's other things that I want him to accomplish every day. And if he accomplishes those things, he can go nuts. And the list is enough that if he's able, stuff like, reading a certain amount, playing his trumpet, playing his drum set, doing his Duolingo, various other like little chore type stuff around the house. It's a healthy list, and if he does it all, if he wants to play 3 hours of some game, he's earned it. So it's that list has kind of shaped how he and I approach life, kind of, because it's just it doesn't make everything he has to do feel like punishment, because he's not really doing it to earn the screen time. We don't talk about screen time. We just talk about, like, sometimes we'll be like, how's your list looking, that kind of thing. It doesn't make everything else feel like the thing you hate to get to the thing you love. That was what was happening before. Anyway, I didn't mean this turned into a parenting seminar, but there are similar kinds of things that happen in the Batman Damian house, where they, Batman and Robin are special because of the way they invest their time into themselves, physically, but also intellectually, also psychologically. Like, you have to spend your time and, take in your calories and sleep in such a way that you make yourself a superhuman thing over time. It's about investment constantly. So that's the part that I bring from our household to the Batman story. Basically, it's just how you're investing your time, and how you're trying to help your kid become, fulfill his potential.
So with Damien, he's got obviously some very interesting genes that he derives from, and had a very singular upbringing. What excuse me, what do you like to take from Damien's backstory and bring to the fore now? Because he's been through quite a lot as a character.
Oh, what do you mean? Yeah, no, he has. So the thing that a lot of writers will bring in to the story about Damien is the Al Ghul of it all. Of course, I mean, obviously they would. So for any listeners who don't know, Damien is the son of Batman and Talia al Ghul from back in the day. And that's a big deal. That's to be Ra's al Ghul's grandson is a big deal. And that's, one of the most interesting things about him is that he is kind of the joining of those two. Like, he was meant to be, like, if Batman had accepted Raz's deal and actually become his heir, then Damien's what would have come of that, presumably, and possibly other kids that would have made his whole bloodline. So Damien's kind of this unexplored potential for that, how that might have gone. But whenever I come onto a new book, I try to be aware of the context in which I'm coming onto the book. And there's been plenty of Al Ghul stuff in the series before now, and not just in Josh's run, but also the Lazarus Planet stuff before that, and other stuff with Damien and Talia and everything before that. Like, it's going back a long time. Most Damien stories involve the Al Ghuls in some kind of way. And I'm not going to say that we're not going to see any Al Ghul stuff in this series ever. But you know what I haven't really seen is any kind of exploration of Damian as a Wayne. Like Damian almost doesn't even see himself as a Wayne. He's Batman's son, not Bruce Wayne's. Like he came to Batman. He came to Gotham as the heir to Batman. As like he's there because Batman's his dad. He doesn't really see himself as a Wayne really. And I thought that was an opportunity. I wanted to kind of see him. I wanted to see his faith shaken, and well, I also want to see what his faith was even in, because I mean the whole obsession with Gotham is Bruce Wayne's obsession, and all the Robins and other partners he's had are kind of just in service of Batman, and not really because they themselves give a flying shit about Gotham in the same way. Like Bruce Wayne was the heir to Gotham, and then it all kind of got torn down, and now he's out to defend and protect his city. But if they had been in Chicago or Seattle or whatever, I don't see that the Robins would have made it. You know, it wouldn't have been all that different. You know, Bruce Wayne is the one that gives a shit about Gotham, including Damian. Like Damian has been raised since he was, you know, a fetus to be this killer assassin, super capable killer. But that was always just that was just laid at his feet. Like he's got the tools, but he doesn't have any kind of, he doesn't have the purpose. Like Bruce Wayne Batman began with the purpose, and then he had his walkabout to gather the tools. But Damian's tools have always been there, but he doesn't have any. He's not about Gotham really. So I wanted to see Damian struggle with that and be like, what am I even doing this for? Like we see Damian kind of screw up the first couple of issues, and we see him question, are we even doing the right thing? Like we work so hard. Like I've never had a hamburger, you know, like you know, my life is so goddamn intense and hard, and we still fail. You know, that girl might die and it's my fault. Like, what are we doing this for? And we have to see his faith shaken a little bit. And then I like him discovering suddenly that Thomas Wayne was a hero too, in a very different kind of way. And like, you know, what does that life look like? So in this world, we get to see Damian Wayne kind of exploring his other birthright as the son of the Waynes. What if, you know, what if Bruce Wayne was the outlier? What if the Waynes are actually, what if they were on the right track? People as, you know, champions of industry and doctors and builders. What if those are the real heroes in this city? And he sees Thomas Wayne's journal and realizes, and as he's reading it, he's like, things are actually okay back then. Like when Thomas Wayne's talking about Gotham, this is way better. Like, what if we're the problem? And, you know, if I were a doctor, could we have a different kind of life? What if we could save people this other way? So I thought that was a really fun kind of way to approach it. And also the idea of seeing Batman and Robin at a similar age because of the emergence of this really creepy character from Batman's Walkabout when he was practically Robin's age, and seeing Bruce and Damian at similar ages. I kind of had the True Detective thing where you see, you know, future and past kind of playing out at the same time. And, you know, seeing them the same, like both interacting with the same person and how similar and different they are. I don't know. It's just, I'm really proud of the story, and the artists are crushing it and just having an amazing time on it.
So, what was the inspiration for Memento? The guy from the past and supposedly in the present.
Memento is kind of the people who've kind of inspired that character are Aleister Crowley and Jack the Ripper, basically. If I had to kind of boil it down to actual people, I love stories like Gotham by Gaslight and the doom that came to Gotham, and kind of those like really creepy stylized takes on how Gotham could be, and like quasi supernatural kind of stories that might I don't know. I love the open question as well as stories like Pan's Labyrinth, where you're not ever sure if, forgive me, have you guys seen that movie? So you never are entirely sure if that story is happening in the protagonist's head, if she's just trying to deal with her crazy life and she's just making up fantasies to get her through it, or if she's actually seeing fairies and fauns and monsters. You kind of there are moments that suggest both ways. And I just love that. I love that. I spoke to a colleague after I saw that movie, and he was so annoyed with that movie. He's like, "Man, this sucks." It's. He made it sound like. Let's see what he was. He was really pissed about. I think that the girl like presumably died or something. He was all in on one take of what happened, and I tried to explain to him, I was like, "There's interpretation here. Like, there's." She could be, this could all be real. She could be in the fairy kingdom right now. And she's like, no, but this and this, it's all made up. It's just in her head. She's dead, blah, blah, blah. Like, it doesn't have to be that way. And I love that the movie was such a way that it allowed for that conversation. And I kind of want that. And I kind of want that here too. I want it to be an open question, whether Memento is this supernatural thing that he seems to be, or if he's just a guy in a mask. I don't know. That fits a story like a Batman detective noir kind of story for me. And I wanted something that kind of captures that creepy vibe from stories like Gotham by Gaslight and Doom That Came to Gotham, and also like this ongoing murder mystery, like something like Long Halloween. So whenever I take on a book, I have to assume it'll be the last story with that character I ever write. And if this is my only Batman book, I want to really take a swing and tell exactly the story that I wanted to. And even, I mean, as a dad, it was no kind of effort at all to write Damien into it. The whole thing was kind of revolved around his relationship with Damien, just because that's just in me as a writer. Like most of my stories are about my son in some kind of way.
Now you talked about it, like approaching Superman and Batman. How is when you wrote John Stewart, did you approach that character, and how did it differ from the way you approach Batman or Superman?
John is interesting because um, he is driven by duty, and not just to the Lantern Corps. Like he was driven by that same duty when he was a Marine. He was driven by that same duty when he was just the son of his mother, of that civil rights leader mother that helped shape him. There are a lot of different elements to John that I wanted to show in the book. One thing that always kind of annoyed me about John is that he didn't, when I see him in like the animated show or some stories, especially like team books where he's just like one voice among many. Very often he kind of gets boiled down to a very basic bitch kind of version of himself, where he's just like, oh, this is the ex-Marine, so I talk in this kind of way, and look how tough I am. And that's part of him, but there's so much more to him than that. When I grew up, I mean, I didn't have a whole lot of comics with John in them, but the ones I did have, I viewed him as the architect. And to see that just totally get washed away, and he's just a military guy, and every word he says is just like military jargon as imagined by civilians. It's just kind of annoying and kind of reductive and a disservice to how complicated that character is. If I were going to boil John's character down to one moment, it's from like right around the time of his origin, where he shows up in costume. Like he gets the costume, it just appears, and he takes off his mask and throws it aside. He's like, I've got nothing to hide, and he throws it away. That really struck me. And not even Superman does that. I mean, he himself had the alter ego. So for John to be like, screw this, I'm John Stewart, Green Lantern. And it made a lot of sense, because as the son of a civil rights leader, I don't even know if this is what, like, Denny and Neil and those guys were going for. But to be the son of a civil rights leader mother, the mistrust of a masked vigilante made a lot of sense to me. Like, I love the idea of them getting out there and like knowing what the mother had been dealing with around that same time period. I don't know. It just made a lot of sense. So I love the idea of John as the guy who just threw his mask away with disdain. Like, I don't need this. This is my name, and I'm going to do the right thing right in front of you. So that was kind of my take on John. I wanted to see the different elements, even the Dark Star stuff, like so many different elements of John. I wanted to try to incorporate as much of that as I could. There was also a really powerful story that I remember from yesteryear with his sister, where he talks about his sister's death that I thought was very interesting. So I wanted to incorporate that as well. Yeah, the mission statement of the book is like, I wanted to make the like all-consuming arc of John Stewart that like really shows who he is, all the different facets of who he is, makes him complicated, that gives something that other writers and readers and actors and whoever can turn to, like, this is how I understand who John Stewart is. So I took my best swing at that.
Cool.
So, flipping over to your Marvel work now, you're writing Incredible Hulk and Hellhunters, and kind of killing it with both the books, man.
Thanks, dude.
You've got this very horror forward approach with Hulk that is different than what Al Ewing and company did over an Immortal Hulk. And how are you feeling about Hulk these days?
I'm loving it. We have a lot of story left to tell. I'm going to be on the book for a good while longer. Just building up to this thing right now, man. I'm going to say it's probably the biggest status quo change ever in the character's history. And that's coming pretty soon. I'm really excited about it. It's there's always going to be people who get pissed. That's fine. But I myself, as a fan of that character and a reader, if I knew what was coming, I'd be real excited. So it's too early to spoil what's coming, but man, is it cool. And the art looks so goddamn good. And I just can't wait for you to see it. So far up till now, the whole story has been largely about Hulk's relationship with Charlie. Charlie is someone I introduced for a couple of reasons. The character is very similar to both Banner and Hulk in her way, and she has a very different relationship with Banner and Hulk. She has a lot of disdain for Banner because she sees her own weakness in him. She's been through a lot of abuse, the way that Banner was himself with his dad. And she sees when she sees Banner, she sees like this skinny nerd that can't defend himself. And she finds him, kind of exasperating. And she's really frustrated with her own weakness and sees all that in him too. Hulk she is so impressed with Hulk's strength. She is just so taken with it. Like, she just has to have it. She just wants so bad to be a monster herself. Because she's got this scar, she sees herself as a monster already, and she's like, if I could, like, that strength is all I want. So it was kind of like a mirror through which to better understand Banner and Hulk, and also it introduced another character that could bounce off both characters. Because you so rarely see Banner and Hulk in the same space. So it was just a cool way to explore them a little better. But there was about to be a big shift. We've already seen Charlie become a monster now herself, and that's changed things for her and Hulk quite a bit. And like, Hulk and Banner both have their own feelings about it, and but there's something else coming up soon that's going to change the whole game. God, what else can I say about that? I don't know. My whole Hulk run is all kind of planned out. Like, I know where the whole thing is going. The whole thing tells just one giant story. And there are a lot of like little mini arcs all the way through that. That was important to me. Because as I said, I grew up on Marvel Team Up. And I don't know. I love it was really cool as a kid to see, like, to get like a one and done issue or like a 2-issue thing, and it's all wrapped up. Most of the comics that I really admire these days that are coming out, you've kind of got to catch up from the beginning, or you're just sort of screwed. Like, it's all one ongoing thing. And like, imagine watching the show Severed from like season 2, episode 3. You're like, what the fuck is happening? A lot of comics are like that, and that's great. I myself, I'm not saying it's bad. I've written plenty of stories like that, but I also, as a reader, as a kid, whose collection was almost entirely just second, third hand books that had been, ripped up years earlier. And I almost never got consecutive issues of anything. Whenever I had 2 issues that were consecutive, it was like a treasure. I was like, oh my God, I can see what happens. It was so cool. Whenever there was a one and done, that was awesome. Or if I only had to go back 1 issue, that was also really cool. So I'm trying to give readers a lot of that on Hulk. I want to give readers just constant jumping on points. But that being said, it is also one gigantic story that eventually it ties all together and is going to a very finite place. So it's like within sight, kind of. It's still a long way off, but it's, I don't know, all the pieces are kind of getting on the board, and I'm really stoked for you guys to see what's coming.
Now, do you have to put yourself in a different frame of mind when you're writing Batman and then switching over to Hulk, or writing Hulk and switching over to Batman?
Oh yeah. Yeah. The theme, like every story has its own theme. Like the Hulk thing, it's a monster movie. I mean, it's so different. Like it's the things I'm trying to accomplish in a Hulk story. I mean, there has to be a 2-page transformation spread of some kind. So much of the Hulk thing is about the visual. And we've been, Nick and the other artists too, like Kev and Danny, everybody has been just crushing the body horror. So I have to keep giving them those opportunities. So that's in there. It's the whole thing is a story about monsters, like the nature of what it means to be a monster. Like that's this huge part of the story. So that's kind of the theme. Like Banner is the thing that stalks Banner. He's the monster of the movie now, and he's up against other monsters. He's only the good guy because he's destroying things that are worse. So we're also introducing tons of mythology, and so that's a driving force. With Batman, it's about that thing I'm talking about, where it's about like looking inward, like that power fantasy. I want readers to always have that from every Batman book. Superman, they have to hear John Williams' trumpet. It's just everything's so different. Like the underlying mission statement of every book is so different. So I can't just jump from Batman right into Hulk and just not have some kind of a switch flipping in my head first. Like there needs to be like a real shift. Every book just needs to feel very, very different. I mean, the same way that every character in a story has to speak with their own voice. Like if every character in a book have kind of like the same kind of trick of speech, or the same kind of sense of humor, or the same kind of underlying wittiness or something, I've failed. They all come from their own place, and they all need to speak their own kind of way. And every book is like that too. It needs to have its own mission statement. Like in Batman, there's this really fun, like an example would be, let's see, my first issue 14. It showed Batman. This thing is happening downstairs. Like there's guys like taking over the building while he and Damian are in this event. And Batman, there's no time to get to a suit. So he has to just go down there, and he uses his tech to turn all the lights off in the building, and he takes them all out in his clothes. Like he uses the darkness as his mask. That was like this really fun kind of power fantasy, like empowering kind of feeling, like, yeah, I could do this too. Like I want the reader to look at me like I could do this too. I could be what this is if I just gave it my all. There's a scene in a later issue, like 17 or so, when he and Red Hood are in a building, like clearing out a building of mob guys that are in a fight, while ill-intentioned SWAT team guys are in there. And Batman is taking control of all the Bluetooth speaker devices in the whole building, and he's using them as like the voice of God. He's like, get out. And guys like, send him out, Batman, we're coming in. Like they're like, hey, we're tough guys, put down your weapons. And Batman's like, you're new here. And then you see the grappling gun like grab his leg and pull him up into the rafters, and he was like, that's a Metropolis accent. That ridiculous up and down cadence makes you all sound like children. Like I love the shade that he throws at Metropolis. And it just feels so fucking good to hear Batman being like the tough guy and backing it all up and just slinging people around like it's effortless. I just love that. I love how powerful he is, because he's taken the time to prepare. His whole city is his like gym. Like he controls every element of that place. He can take control of the power system. He can take control of the audio. He can take control of the skies or the roads or the traffic lights or whatever he needs to. So I don't know. It's every book is so different in that way.
Yeah. Speaking about different, Hellhunters is about killing dead Nazis.
It's about killing Nazis. That's exactly right. Yeah, I've got a Nazi hang up, and that book's my therapy. I wanted it to feel like kind of the old war action movies, kind of. But also I mean, really, I pitched it as Marvel's Inglourious Bastards. I want it to feel like this just super fun Nazi killing fantasy romp, but using Marvel's most badass roster. And that book has just been a dream come true, and it's special to me too because that was a book that I pitched out of the air. Like there would be no Hellhunters without me, and that makes it really like kind of dear to me. There would be if that truck with my name on it got me, a year or two ago, there would still be a Batman and Robin book on the shelf. There would be a Superman book. There would be, an Incredible Hulk book. But Hellhunters is all us. It's purely a thing created by the creators because we wanted to do it and because Marvel let us. So I'm very attached to that book. It's almost like create our own Marvel kind of.
Were there any characters that you wanted to include that you weren't able to?
That's a good question. No, actually, I got everyone I wanted. In fact, we added one. It was going to be when I pitched it. It was going to be Ghost Rider 44, Wolverine, or Logan, I should say. Sergeant Nick Fury, Peggy Carter, Teenage Psycho Bucky. That was going to be the whole team. But then, as we were actually getting into nuts and bolts of how the book was getting scripted, we were a little light on visually interesting superpowers, and we're kind of thinking about who else we might use. And I think my editor Jordan White said, "What about Sebastian Zardos?" And he was like the Soldier Supreme. He was the guy who Jason Aaron introduced, I think, in Avengers Infinite. Is that correct? Something like that.
Yeah, it sounds right.
Yeah, he did this really interesting Avengers adjacent book that incorporated like otherworldly versions of Avengers, and he included Sebastian Zardos, the Soldier Supreme. And man, he's cool. There were a lot of things about him I really liked, and so I wanted to use him as well. It made a lot of sense. We'd have like Doctor Strangey kind of character on the team, and I love his look as well. It just kind of fit. So yeah, no, I got everyone I wanted, and then we had one more.
Nice. And kind of taking a step back, how do you work with the creators? Do you kind of do you give them? It sounds like you give them some room to insert their own creative once they have the script.
Yeah, the script, I do write very detailed scripts, but not in a commanding kind of way. Like there's always a lot on the page, but I'm just telling. Okay, sorry, I do this thing where I bet to tell a story. I bet to say something, I realize you don't know what I mean, so I back up and I back up again. So when I first came on to Superman, I got to read some of Brian Michael Bendis' scripts that were leading up. Like I read all the PDFs of everything he had written up to that point, and then the scripts for the ones that were not out yet. And he wrote this thing in a script I will never forget. He was, I can't remember who the artist was he was speaking to, but he said, "Hey man, looking forward to working with you on this. Just understand that this is all yours to play with. I'm just telling you a story so that you can tell a story." I love that. That's so accurate to what a comic script is. Like when you're writing a screenplay, it's meant to be read very easily and concisely and quickly by a ton of different people that are involved. A comic is more of a love letter to the artist. Editors will read it, colorists will read it, letters will read it, but it's largely a letter to the artist. So I do put a lot of information in there. I give them a lot of detail because I find that when I go real vague, sometimes things end up like as schedules kind of get crunched. Sometimes a lot like stuff will look a little sparse, or some artists will kind of get in the habit of not adding things that are not specifically called out. And I find I get the best results with most artists if I give them a lot of detail, give them a very clear sense of the environment, of the atmosphere, of what we're looking at. I try to send a lot of photo ref or art ref to make sure they know what everything looks like, with the understanding that I want them to change whatever they want. They are the cinematographer. They're the set designer, the lighting tech. Like they have so many jobs. If this were a movie, they would be like so many jobs would be incorporated by the artist. I want them to feel invested and free to do things the way they want to do. So I give them a lot of detail, and then it's kind of up to them how much of that to use. And if there's anything really important, I'll call it out. Like if I'm, let's see, an example would be when Danny Earls drew the Frozen Charlotte arc. I think those are issues 9, 10, 11. Those take place in New Orleans. And at one point, Charlie bumps into a cop, and she kind of takes refuge in an antique store. Danny lives in Ireland, and to my knowledge, he's never been in an American antique store. And in an antique store in the South, I should add, which is different. So I gave him a ton of little details to like, here's some things that you'll see on the walls. Here's what the floor looks like. I think the only things I specifically called out were this cornet, like a certain kind of like a trumpet kind of that's on the wall, because they talk about it in the dialogue. And I also mention how close or far away Charlie and the old lady were from the door, and how close Charlie was from the back door, because that mattered for where the story was going to be going at in the next few pages. So I called out the distance and I called out the cornet. And aside from that, I gave him a lot of details, other things you might see. And Danny, he drew every damn thing I put in there. And even then, the floor plan of the antique store looked a little comfy and professional looking. And I was like, it's got to look messy as fuck in there. Like the way that an antique store actually looks, it should be like really jam packed with stuff. And I can't remember if I sent him. I don't know if I had any photo ref of that or not, but I just explained like they need to be like walking around things, like tables covered with stuff, like standing in the middle that is kind of in the way. And he totally did it. So that's the kind of detail that I add to a page. I try to give him a lot of detail with the permission to add or omit anything they wanted. And one thing that Danny added to that scene, I was so impressed by. I was like, man, I love this dude. He added a jar of Civil War bullets. And man, I don't know why I didn't think to put that in there, but that is exactly the kind of thing that you see in a Southern American antique store. Like if you're in a place where Civil War battles were happening, there's always a jar of fucking bullets in there. And he knew that. I think a couple of them might have even been like smushed, like you sometimes find. Man, it was great. I was so impressed by that. That and like the little snarl of wire around the cop's walkie. Like stuff like that. I don't know if you guys spend a lot of time around cops, but that's a real thing. So I don't know. There's just a lot of stuff that I just love the attention to detail that Danny shows in his atmosphere. So anyway, that kind of stuff matters. I always give him a ton, but I also make sure I spell out in the script, unless we've worked together a long time, that they have permission to, tell their own story from that.
Go ahead, Chad.
Oh, I was just going to say, looking back on your career, what advice would you give a young Phillip Kennedy Johnston who's just beginning writing that now that you
Oh
wish you
man.
knew then?
That's a solid question. You know, it wasn't so much that I needed to know things I didn't know then. It's more just gaining the skills. Um, every step that I took back then was really important. I It wasn't. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the process of squashing ignorance, I was doing through talking to other creators and artists, and like I would go through Artist Alley at every convention and ask a ton of questions. I would read a lot of books by creators or people in the industry. Um, so I was learning everything I needed to know. It was really the things that were kind of holding me back, or my were things like my comfortable my comfort level in talking to people. I One thing, because I mean, I grew up as a musician. Like I became a musician before I became a writer. And one part of that gig I always kind of hated was the hustle, like having to hustle to gig. Hate that shit. And that's, in fact, I kind of took jobs in which I didn't have to. Like at first I got in with the Glenn Miller band. So then when you're in the band, you're in the band and you just play. You don't have to, you're not like having to, those guys are always on tour. There's no home base. You're not taking other gigs. You're just on the road all the time. And then I got a gig with one of the Army bands in the Capitol. And it's the same kind of thing. You've got your gig. You don't have to gig anymore if you don't want to outside of what you're doing with the Army. I just didn't like the self-promotion aspect. I never really liked it and was not really very good at it. So that was kind of a thing in the writing space as well. Because if you are, I'm not going to say it's easier to be a comic artist than a writer. It's not. Like the difficulty is in getting the skills to be great. Like the difficulty in being a comic artist is learning how to do the damn thing because it's a hard job. But once the skills are there, they're just on the page for everyone to see. Anyone can look at your pages and be like, holy crap, you're really good. As a writer, you have to prove yourself in a very different kind of way. I think the act of writing, the act of getting good enough to write, is easier than the act of becoming a great artist. But to get people to take you seriously and see that you are great or good even is hard, because as if you're writing comics, especially, no one's going to read your script. Nobody, literally no one is going to take your comic script and read that whole thing and be like, oh wow, you're really good, or you need to work on this. You have to actually kind of hitch your wagon to some artists, and you have to sell yourself to publishers, to editors, but also to artists to make them understand, even though you haven't done anything yet to speak of, you are to be taken seriously. Okay, you know what? If I was going to tell my younger self one thing, I would say, don't pitch. Understand that when you're pitching your book, you're not just pitching your book. What you were really pitching is yourself. And that is actually more important than the story itself. Don't just pitch the story. Like if you got some cool idea, you're like, this is such an amazing idea, and I'm so fucking proud of it, and I'm going to be a star based on the strength of this story. This is going to be my Hellboy, and everything else I do is going to be because of this amazing thing that I made. That's not really like, it's not like they're not listening to you pitch your story. They want to know that the story is good, but they also want to see that you are a serious person that is going to continue to be a big deal in this industry, that you could make it in this industry. You're going to succeed. They need to believe that you are a success just waiting to be achieved. That is a huge, huge deal. Because I mean, for a variety of reasons. For one thing, even if the idea is good, but you come across like a wet fart, they're not going to take a chance on you as a person, as a professional. You know. Also, if you're pitching it to an editor or publisher, and even if you crush the pitch, even if they're like, "Wow, that sounds really amazing," but we've already got a story that we're putting out this year that's awfully similar to that. What else you got? The answer can't be nothing. You know, you can't just be, I'm the guy who made this one thing. You have to be, I'm a writer and I'm not fucking around. Yeah. So if I were to give myself one bit of advice, I would say, understand, not just in writing, but in anything else too. When you're doing an interview or, doing a book report, whatever the thing is, don't just pitch the thing. Don't just present the thing you're presenting. Present yourself. That is actually more important than the thing you're showing. Make everyone understand that you are to be taken seriously. That's probably the most important thing I've learned through all this.
I love it. So, what do you have coming up next that you can talk about? Any new series? Any story arcs in mind that you can dish on?
Any new creator-owned stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a creator-owned book, greenlit, that's going to be coming out next year. I know it's a long way off, but it's still real early, but man, it's going to be cool. I can't wait for you to see. So yeah, new creator-owned coming. It's actually going to be a thing announced tomorrow that I'm doing in collaboration with a couple of friends. It's not exactly a new series. It's like just a story that's coming out. That's going to be coming out soon. I shouldn't say though, because they're literally doing it tomorrow. I just found out today that they're presenting it tomorrow. So I should probably sit on that. But it's let's see. So Hellhunters, one more issue of Hellhunters coming out. Hellhunters 5. So that was always meant to be a mini series. Like I just wanted it to be like a movie length story rather than the TV show that never ends. But I do want sequels. Like the way I would like it to go is more like the Brubaker Phillips kind of volumes that come out.
Right on.
That's what I would like this to be, where it's like, boom, Hellhunters Volume 1, and then later it's like, Hellhunters Fury Road or whatever. Just each, a bunch of other Hellhunters books with subtitle. That's what I would like for the series, and each one could potentially have a somewhat different roster and different mission going on. I would love to just have this ongoing Hellhunters kind of franchise within the Marvel U, and just make World War II a bigger part of their whole, lineup.
Yeah.
So yeah, last issue of the first Hellhunters volume is about to drop. Incredible Hulk is ongoing with some big heavy shit coming soon. Issue 23 dropped this week. 24 introduces a new artist that we're bringing on, Kev Walker, who is amazing. And that takes us into issue 25, which is the big Hulk versus Thor issue. And that's going to be incredible. Batman and Robin's ongoing. Probably one of my favorite comics I've ever written is Batman and Robin number 20. So issue 19 just dropped. That's the last issue of our first arc. The first issue of the next arc sees Robin missing, and we see all of Batman's allies kind of just scouring the city for him, and we get to see Thomas Wayne's journal in the comic. Like some of the comic pages are Thomas Wayne's journals that have illustrations in them. Junie Baugh, who did that amazing Robin book called Boy Wonder, comes back, and we're going to see a comic that Robin drew, as drawn by Junie Baugh, and then the main, like the real events happening as drawn by Miguel Mendonca. It's one of the comics I am most proud of. So that comes out this coming month. And Batman and Robin's ongoing, of course. God, what else? What am I forgetting? Something important. I'm writing Adventures of Superman is coming out in a few months. I shouldn't say a few months. It's going to come out later this year, I should say. That's with Scott Godlewski. What else? There's the creator owned I can't talk about. Another Big 2 book I can't talk about. So lots of work, lots of cool shit.
That's awesome. And where can we find you on social media?
You can find me at Phillip K. Johnston, 2 L's in Phillip, most places. I'm at Facebook under my full name. I think I'm under Instagram and all the Twitter descendants at Phillip K. Johnston.
Awesome. Well, Phillip, thank you very much for hanging out with us tonight and talking a little bit. Yeah, you're doing great things out there, and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to hang with us.
Thanks, brother. My pleasure. It's good to see you guys again.
So, Chad, who are we going to be talking to next week?
Anthony Del Cole.
Sweet. I love it. All right. Well, until then, may you all get out there and do good things in the world. Support your local comic shop, support local art, support local music, all that good shit. And until then, we are the Comic Watchers, and this is our show.
Don't be a Nazi.
Don't be a Nazi. Absolutely right.